Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is ATOA, Artists Talk on Art. This is our 84th Monday virtual open studio. It is December 13th, 2022. ATOA has been around since 1975. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. All our talks have been live in the Lower West Side of New York City. As a result of COVID, the last 84 plus several other talks before that have been through this Zoom format. Obviously, we'd all like to be together and in person, but there have been some obvious benefits. Tonight, Kyle Cottier will be one of the presenters. He's coming in from Tennessee. We don't expect him to fly in to New York City. Throughout the last year and a half, we've had speakers from England, from, I believe, Australia, Hawaii. We've had the globe covered in several continents. ATOA, we have our website, atoanyc.org. You can see our calendar and what's to come. And this talk is being recorded and it'll be on our YouTube channel. There is a link for our YouTube channel on our website as well. We started at 6, we ended about 7:30. We do have a new format coming for 2022. We will be starting at 7 o'clock and ending at 8:30. We also have a new Zoom link coming for 2022. I don't have it as of yet. When I do, it'll be on the website. And of course, it'll be in the email blast that we do and everything that we do. We do have a art for sale section on our website. It's sort of, if you buy, it supports the artist. They receive 70%, 30% goes to ATOA, and it supports our ongoing operations. We are not going back to live talks in January. That's been postponed to the earliest April 1st. The first quarter, we're going to sit out, given the sort of persistent problems with COVID. While we're having our talks, mute yourself. If you ever want to jump in and say something, unmute yourself. You can ask a question. You can make a comment. Anything you like works. There is a chat section as well. Feel free to put in any information about your show, about yourself, if you're having a show, emails, anything at all that you like. And of course, if you're not on our email list, feel free to reach out to me or put it in the chat and we'll get you on board. Tonight, we have a talk organized by Elisa Pritzker called the International Society of Antiquaries. We have 5 presenters. One is not here. We have Olivia Baldwin, Jeff Benjamin, who's not here, but his work will be presented, and Greg Slick will sort of do the audio and discuss it. We have Kyle Cottier, Greg Slick, as I mentioned, and Elisa will be a presenter. I'm going to pass it over to you, Elisa. First, I want to thank you for organizing this. I see a lot of people here who have organized talks, who have talks that are coming, that they've organized, and it seems seamless and easy. It is often a lot of work to organize and to coordinate. And I want to thank you in advance, Elisa, also for your attendance at so many talks, and of course, your questions and the spirit you bring and the spirit of the SoCon people that you bring along with you. And as well, I want to thank, I see many regulars here, and it's so nice to see both old faces and new faces. They're all young faces, but they're old and new. So Elisa, go ahead. We look forward to an exciting night and welcome.
Well, thank you, Barry, for the presentation and for the thank yous. And I have to thank you because during the week you took the time to show me, to make sure that the sharing will be going well. So you took time from your time to help me. So you have really a wonderful spirit. So I had to thank ATOA and also in particular Barry. And of course, everybody that is tonight with us. I have the privilege to be part of the International Society of Antiquaries. And as you introduce my colleagues, we are 5 members in this group. And it is the founder, Greg Slick, Olivia, that is Baldwin, that is just a wonderful colleague, and Kyle, our younger member that is in Tennessee now, and Kyle Cottier, and Jeff Benjamin, that is not here, but his work. And for me, if his work is here, he's here. So what I will do is I will go directly to the screen share so we can go directly to tell all of you what is the International Society of Antiquaries. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll go here, and this is very...
Mm.
Okay, here we are. Thank you, Barry, again. It was easy to get in. So we already mentioned the name several times. We are the International Society of Antiquaries, the ISA, and as you can see, we have a logo and we have our founder, that is Greg Slick. So I will invite Greg Slick to begin the conversation and to tell us why he founded the International Society of Antiquaries. So Greg, are you ready to tell us?
Certainly. Thank you, Elisa, and thank you, Barry, for having us and making this happen. The International Society of Antiquaries, it is a mouthful, but intentionally so. It has a sound that is, it's old, but it's also sort of tongue-in-cheek in a sense. As they say, many a truth is told in jest. And I wanted to originally come up with a society, and it came from a sense of not having belonged to anything ever. Originally, I sat down in 2018 and sketched out a logo, and it was just a quirky, weird thing to do. And I would say that my influences were the Museum of Jurassic Technology that was, formed by David and Diana Wilson years ago. There's a great book by Lucy Lepard called Overlay, which was very influential. And also, I would say the films of Wes Anderson. At the time, I began noticing that there were other artists like myself around me in the Hudson Valley and all the way down to New York City that were very invested in looking back in order to look forward. They were leveraging in their practices, they were leveraging things like ritual, history, archaeology. And I found this to be very interesting. Certainly, this is nothing new. Go back to some of the land artists, like Michelle Stewart and Richard Long and Ana Mendieta. They were dealing with these very subjects. These were directions in their art. But I wanted to look at this and see how these themes were being handled and incorporated into art now. So eventually, I decided that I wanted to invite some people to maybe collaborate with, or perhaps just form a loose collective. And this is really what we have is a loose collective of artists. And, as we mentioned before, it's Olivia Baldwin, Jeff Benjamin, Cottier, Elisa Pritzker, and Greg Slick. We're committed to the scholarship and preservation of material culture and sites of historic value. Some of these ideas really are very aspirational, but it's something that eventually we'd like to do. Tethering a curious and appreciative audience of lay people and specialists to the unfolding narrative of the distant past and its bridge to the present. And of course, we want to, foster collaboration between artists, archaeologists, and anthropologists. And this is actually a kind of a sub-discipline of archaeology, art/archaeology, that has gained a lot of traction for a while now. where artists and archaeologists collaborate in order to come up with work with, it could be an artwork or text, but that is something that is goes beyond either discipline. And this is just a photograph of our very first show at the Mirov Kotler Center at SUNY New Paltz back in 2019. We can go to the next slide. You may be wondering why antiquarianism. It's such an odd thing to align oneself with in a contemporary art initiative. Antiquaries, I've always been obsessed with antiquaries. They were the people who came before archaeologists. They kind of paved the way. These were the collectors and the amateurs who put together cabinets of curiosity. And what is interesting about antiquaries is that they were, for the most part, middle-class people. They were part of the rise of the middle class. And they focused on objects, the materiality, to understand history. Prior to this, all history was from the perspective of text. In other words, who wrote what king did what, and a lot of the history really was written in order to substantiate the rights of a noble house. So all of a sudden you have the middle class saying, hey, we're just interested in these objects. And lo and behold, as these objects were excavated, and we get up into, the excavation of Pompeii and this sort of thing, and much older things like the archaeological record began to form around prehistoric civilizations. Suddenly these things did not jibe with the official history. The official line was called into question. So the materiality, the handling of objects, the understanding objects is very important to us. This is a concept that the French archaeologist Laurent Olivier talks about, material memory. Material memory is a very important thing because it's something that links us links the present to the past. And it's something that we like to have as a conceptual underpinning in our presentations. And here you see, go ahead.
That's okay. No. I thought that you finished, but I will add it later. Just continue, please.
Okay. And I just wanted to point out that there's this weird little Dutch 17th century illustration that kind of shows, it's an antiquarian illustration, and it begins to show the interest in, placing a kind of a narrative into these burial mounds that began to be excavated. What was going on? Was there some sort of pagan priestess, hanging out there and speaking to her disciples? Of course, this is not accurate, but it really goes to show the beginnings of this interest in prehistory. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
Thank you, Greg. I wanted to say the human side of it. I know Greg for a long time. We did exhibit together in different occasions, and it was a great pleasure when he asked me to join his idea. And of course, we got together and we celebrate with a flag, with a logo, and we cheer together. And we have a sense of friendship and camaraderie. And it's so interesting to get together and almost without talking, the five of us, we understand what we are doing. It's really great to belong to a group that we have that really sense of community and share ideas, even if we come from a different place, and you'll see when we present our work. So I'm going to the next one.
I want to jump in and ask a question. Alyssa, can you go back to the first image with the logo? And Greg, I saw some symbolism in there. I can obviously recognize the owl as intellectualism and wisdom, but I certainly see the snake going around. Do you mind discussing the symbols in your logo and what they mean to you and your organization?
Yes, certainly. So, the owl, certainly is a classic symbol of wisdom, sometimes of esoteric wisdom. And you'll see to the right of the owl, there's a couple. Those are actually standing stones, so they are there to indicate materiality going way back to prehistory. And then in the center, there's a flame. It's sort of like the fire of learning or of illumination. And of course, the abbreviation, letters for the ISA. And then below that, there's a little thing there, a band that is actually an archaeological photo scale. So if you ever see a photo from the field at an archaeological dig, you'll often see a photo scale. It'll be a staff with different bands that are usually like 10 centimeters wide each. So those are placed in the photo to indicate, the scale of the artifact or the feature that's been excavated. And of course, you have the snake, the Ouroboros, which is kind of a mystical symbol that goes back to the mystery schools or even further. And it kind of just, encompasses the whole thing. It kind of wraps all of these ideas together. And it's definitely it kind of feels like an esoteric symbol. It's really more straightforward than that. I think the inspiration comes from these actual antiquarian societies that still exist today, like the London Society of Antiquaries, which has been around since the 18th century. It's a society that was formed in a pub in, I think, 1706. And it was a bunch of guys who were, middle class. I forget the details of the actual personalities, but these were people who, on their spare time, would just go out into the countryside and, dig up a grave or something, or a passage tomb, or kind of poke around and find all this stuff and collect it. And they're the trappings around these kinds of societies tended to have this very, mysterious feel, which is something that I wanted to appropriate as well. And I think that's part of the fun of putting together a weird little society like this. And as I said, before, many a truth is told in jest, and there is a tongue-in-cheek aspect to it, but the conceptual underpinnings are very serious. We're dealing with very, serious ideas regarding how contemporary art deals with the past.
Okay, thank you. Here, well,
Sure.
we come to very short. We can explain why it's an interdisciplinary group, and we have one of our members, just to announce it, Jeff Benjamin. He's a PhD in archaeology, besides his art. So you can continue a little bit about why it is important to us that we have other disciplines in the group.
This whole subdiscipline right now of archaeology, art/archaeology. There's a professor out west who has been promoting this. There are a bunch of other people. Famous English archaeologist Colin Renfrew has written about this extensively. And just the combination of different disciplines is something that can produce a a product, an outcome that's going to transcend the disciplines, as they stand alone. So what we want to do with our exhibitions is really have a lot of content and have synergy, from these different disciplines. Everyone in the group is doing something where they're combining different disciplines. So for example, Kyle Cottier, and what you see here in the inset photo is one of Kyle's works, in which he is not only creating contemporary sculpture, but he's also tapping into different craft traditions in order to create the structure, the actual morphological features of his sculpture, and I believe, and Kyle can jump in if he wants to, but I believe he's also looking into the past and into folk traditions, and even earlier than that. So
we have the opportunity when we put his individual work to.
Okay, that's
yeah. I'll let that sit for now. That was a really, really great description. Great, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Nailed it.
Oh, thanks. I just pulled that out of my hat.
Well,
okay.
As you say, this was our first exhibit, and the way that we work, just for the rest of the people that are with us, and thank you to everybody for listening, and also you are welcome to participate and ask questions, and we welcome comments also. We put together proposals. That's the way that we work intellectually to say something that we want to say. And this was our first proposal, and we're really lucky that we presented and we were approved. And this is a great place in the Hudson Valley. Keep an eye on this place, SUNY.
How much?
They have great programs.
All right, come on, because we're late. Yes.
So,
sorry about that. I'm going to mute.
That's okay. I mean, if you visit the Hudson Valley, I encourage to keep an eye on SUNY Ulster, because they have outstanding exhibits, and we were lucky to have an exhibit and a gallery talk. So I don't know if you want to add anything. If not, I'll go to the next. That was our first exhibit, right, Greg?
Yeah, that was so thus far, we've had 3 exhibitions under the, ISA banner. So this was a really, really attractive gallery space. And Susan Jeffers was the gallery coordinator / curator who, facilitated the whole thing. So it was really great to work with her, and SUNY Ulster. And this here's a little close-up of some of the work that I had in the exhibition, which shows some stones that I carved using a Neolithic pecking technique. And this is a good example of bridging the past with the present. So, my practice, even though I'm operating within a contemporary art practice in terms of mostly abstract art, what I wanted to do is to internalize these abstract shapes from deep history. And they are based very specifically on shapes, designs that you would see at the Bruneboyne Valley, especially at Newgrange, Knowth and Douth, just north of Dublin, in Neolithic passage graves. And what I've tried to do is to internalize these shapes, which incidentally, the archaeological community has a theory about these shapes, that they are actually entoptic forms. So if you were induced to hallucinate in a laboratory setting with either audio driving, like ritual drumming, or a psychoactive compound, or if you were to have an optical migraine, or any number of other, reasons, you would hallucinate a very specific set of patterns, which would include C-shaped, these cup patterns, zigzag lines, hash marks, scatters of dots. There's a whole, specific lexicon of these things, which equates directly with the lexicon of shapes that people in Neolithic societies all over Europe used to decorate the stones in passage tombs and standing stones and this kind of thing. So this is just an example of how we try to embed these ideas of bridging the past with the present in our presentations. I hope that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense because I want to add a comment that we discussed it in the group, that we are really, there is not a cut between the past and the present, and we have a lot to learn from our past, just to make sure that we have a sustainable society in our present. It's very important to really dig into the past, in different traditions, just to see what we forgot or what we can bring from the past to the present. And I always think that we can learn a lot from different traditions. I will go to the next one. The second exhibit that it was in Trenton, New Jersey, is the BSB gallery that unfortunately now is not operating anymore. When COVID began, the gallery closed. It was a huge space, and it was really a lot to deal, but we made it, and it was a very successful exhibit. As you can see, Kyle is installing one of his sculptures that we have another close-up, so we'll go to that image so he can talk about that. And then this is also part of the exhibit at the BSB Gallery in Trenton, New Jersey. My work at the left, and Kyle and Olivia in the vault. The gallery had a vault, a bank vault, used to be a bank, that a huge building, and we collaborated and put one piece each in that vault. It was very interesting to have together our work in that bank vault. I don't know if Kyle, do you want to say something about your amazing piece?
Yeah, specifically with this one, and I'll get more into it later, how I kind of arrived at this process of sort of like fusing woodworking and textiles together. But I did a sort of a shaman sort of circle one night with some friends after I had experienced like a tragic loss of a friend who committed suicide. And I just wanted to, I don't know, I was always sort of interested in the shaman journey, and some of the pieces that I made up until then were sort of tapping into some of these things. And I hadn't actually kind of delved into the process. So I had a friend who knew somebody, and we got together one evening. What came out from on the other side of this journey is that I was eventually, I found myself at this bridge after a long journey, and I was staring at this drawbridge, or this wooden bridge that laid across the water, and I was looking over on the other side to an island and a tree, And I remember looking there for a long time, and then I felt caribou, like the velvet of caribou antlers sort of lift me up from under my armpits. And I kind of knew that that was my friend in that moment, like kind of ushering me back to my side, that I wasn't ready to be where he was yet. So this is a piece that kind of came out of that. And there's more images of my website. The original installation of this piece was floating out in the water, where I had the antlers floating and dragging this whole, what is a 50-foot wooden textile piece behind it. So it's kind of calling back to this dream.
Okay. And we come to the last exhibit that we had not too long ago, and it was at the Holland Tunnel, Newburgh, in Newburgh, New York. We had an exhibit in October, November 2021, and we were so happy and lucky to be all together in person, just to celebrate our, a little bit our COVID, post-COVID, or, you know, it was really, you know, the happiness that we had, and not only to be together, but also to be in person. And it was a very successful exhibit. And we have here on the right-hand side, we have one piece by Jeff Benjamin. And we have a beautiful piece in the lower left side by Kyle. And then the other two are works you can recognize my work, because I have in my background a similar work. So I don't know if anybody wants to say something about this exhibit from the group, or we can go directly.
Could I say just something real quick? I don't know how much depth it'll add, but it's the first show that I've missed of all of our shows together, because I'm down here for this residency in Tennessee now. And if anybody else was there, Greg had me on for like a good 10 or so minutes on FaceTime on his phone. So I was a little floating head for a bit, and I'm still upset that I missed this is the first show that I missed, but I'm happy to see everybody's faces here tonight too.
Well, not only that, we took a picture, the four of us, and you were on the screen of Jeff's iPhone. So we said we are the five of us, and Kai was on the screen of the iPhone. So you were with us, Kai, and we are happy that you are doing this amazing residency. Okay, we go to another view, and we have one of the works of Greg first, and then Olivia, and then again Greg. I don't know if you want to say something, or we go directly to the individual images.
Yeah, I just want to make just a quick note about the title of the show, The Longue Durée. It comes from the French School of History, the Annales School, and it's just this concept that that historians really need to not just focus on, for example, like what happened in 1066, but rather look at the sweep of history and how, as a species, we have been impacting and have been impacted by nature in different ways. So it's just this sort of like this broad view, this long view of the historical saga. And I think that it speaks to the way we want to look back in order to look forward with our exhibitions. And
to your point, Greg, I want to read what Barbara Sherman wrote, and it was about the images that you used that drew back to somewhat images from centuries ago. She responded, "So we've always had the impulse to make things beautiful." Nice thought, Barbara. Certainly you see that in the caves of Lascaux and other archaeological finds. Leah Paula says, totally refreshing to hear about inspiration, source, in addition to technique and process, with reverence and homage to the value of the past in the creativity of the present. Nicely said, Leah.
Oh, really nice, very nice, wonderful two comments.
Those are
Thank you.
great. Thank you so much for that. And I just want to add that, you know, by understanding the past, especially the deep past, it helps us to understand who we are as a species.
Well, it sounds
Yeah.
like you're a fan of Carl Jung, certainly the deep past and sort of our archaeological archetypal prototypes.
Yes.
Asha Ruth Nelson says, amazing artworks and artists, and so happy to learn about this wonderful organization. Babs Reingold says, there is a Kierkegaard quote that comes to mind when I think about your work and concept. Life can only be understood backward, but must be lived forward.
Beautiful quote.
Oh, that's wonderful.
We have
Thank
to-
you for that.
We have to get it and keep it. We have to
Let's-
save it. Thank you.
Let's
I'm writing
steal
it
that
down
one.
already.
You're going to steal my quote. I just used that for a statement of plans for something, but it makes me think about your, no, go right ahead. It's a great
Yeah,
quote,
notice-
isn't it? And it applies to
not
your work.
stealing, sharing. Not stealing, sharing.
Okay? They're putting all the Kierkegaard quotes on the back of cereal boxes these days. I know
Oh, they are not.
I want to say that the two images that are on the right-hand side were part of our exhibit at the last exhibit in Newberg, Holland Tunnel. As part of our exhibit, we had two activities. One was a gallery talk at the end, the closing, but in between, we had an excavation led by our colleague Jeff Benjamin. The gallery was a carriage house from the 1800s, so we were hoping to find a lot of treasures, and the gallery director and owner allowed us to do a dig, an archaeological adventure, and that's what we did. So we had a wonderful group of people attending, and we were all digging, we were all learning the process and professionally done, how an archaeologist goes about digging, and learning all the stages. So this is what it is. I don't know if any has a question about it. And
May I just add to that, when we proposed digging up the lawn, the gallery's lawn, Jeff, especially explained that, wouldn't it be interesting to have an archaeological dig as performance art? And this again, is a manifestation of this subdiscipline of art/archaeology. And it was, yet another way to demonstrate for the public, for whoever, decided to show up, that, we can understand, we can do things to understand our past in so many different ways, including having this public archaeological kind of activity. And, we didn't find any treasures per se, but we did find we got down to the 19th century level. This part of the yard was very disturbed because of construction and this sort of thing, but we did find some very interesting fragments, some shards of pottery and ceramics and this kind of thing. And yeah, it was a different kind of experience in conjunction with an exhibition.
okay.
An art exhibition.
Okay, we come to, finally, I wanted to introduce Olivia, please. Just tell us about particularly this installation, and we go to two of the works that you selected to talk. But if you want to introduce your work in this exhibit, and then we'll go to your other works, okay?
Thank you. And thank you to ATOA, and thank you, Barry, and thank you, Elisa and Greg and Kyle. It's really a joy to be a part of this collective, in addition to all that's been said, because it really is a network of mutual support. And it's a joy to collaborate with these other artists, and also to kind of make it work independently, as Elisa said, and then come together and note all of the ways in which the work connects, maybe in ways we hadn't anticipated. So this is an image from our exhibition, Collective Expeditions at SUNY Ulster. And and I guess for quite a while, I was sort of wrestling with my relationship to space and painting, because I primarily work in painting with a bit of sculpture, and even when I do make sculpture, they're sort of in between, I guess I'd say. And it really took me, sort of tearing things apart, pulling things away from the stretcher bars or kind of traditional supports to sort of work out my relationship to space in the paintings. And you'll see that particularly in one of the thresholds. Oh, sorry. Oh, Elisa, can you go back?
Oh, yes, please.
In the threshold, which is the work on the far left, which is made up of parts of previous paintings, which is something that I carry through in a lot of the work. And I find that there are certain sort of recurring forms in my practice, whether I'm painting or whether I'm working more sculpturally. And one such form is the sculpture, the deep purple sculpture that you see on its side, and that's entitled Side Stroke. And part of the sculpture includes a piece of this found wood. If you could continue, Elisa. And this work, so I'd really like to frame a lot of, what I'm thinking about and how I'm working through this piece and the next one. And while my work is quite found, there are two currents that really carry through the work, and that's a reverence for color and an interest in material histories, whether the materials are found or whether I'm actually producing them myself in a way and then sort of reusing them. So this work, Shield, is a 7 by 8 foot painting composed of several parts. I produced the work during a winter residency at Vermont Studio Center, and this piece came together from parts of other works I made during the residency. The individual elements aren't fixed together, rather each is independent. So each time I've installed or shown the work, it's changed, which allows me to respond to the site and for the work to sort of fall together and apart. And even when I've attempted to install this work, Shield, in exactly the same configuration, it's denied that possibility and sort of reinforced the sense that this piece is built from and about a network of relationships. If it's a ½ inch off in one place, all of the relationships change. And I'm quite interested in the way parts and wholes function in a work of art. And here, in a way, it's an argument for the degree to which a painting is alive and receptive and responsive to its environment. This particular work originally began with the small green sections. They were 8 feet tall and somewhat figurative, but didn't quite achieve what I was looking for. So I kept making parts and layering and responding to one part before making another and editing and so on. And something that interests me while I'm making a work, as well as installing it, are the cut edges and how the cut edges really operate as drawings and how these drawings also dictate the shadows surrounding the work. So it's a way of sort of extending the context of the work. You can see this in the left purple segment, as well as how the blue-green portion curves around and holds the brown-yellow tongue-like strip. In much of my work, whether structurally or contextually, one part leans upon another part. I see this reciprocity in the work as a means of talking about relationships broadly, of how we bolster and lean against one another, often at the same time. I'm responsive to the spaces in which I'm making work. The orange piece in the lower half is essentially a painted rubbing from the studio floor. I'm interested in how these compositions can be precise in a way and also susceptible to chance. I work to find relationships, both colors and forms, that operate or fit in unexpected ways. For instance, the way the desaturated pea green meets the orange. It isn't sort of an intuitive color combination, and I'm interested in trying to sort of force it to work even with that friction. So this work is titled Shield because I like the idea of calling it shield while also presenting something that's full of cracks and air in a way. If you were to see it from another profile, you'd see that it's sort of composed of these like flaps and gaps and cracks. It's a means of asserting the strength and tension and then butting it up against a kind of airiness. It's multiplicity of configurations that a thing can in fact be both. And Elisa, if you could move to the next slide, thank you. And the second work I've chosen to introduce is entitled Prism Dust. It's deceptively small, 16 by 16 inches. And in many ways, the piece grew out of this pandemic context. This piece and much of my recent work deals more directly with loss and regeneration, which is something I've thought about for a very long time, having experienced loss as a child. What Prism Dust and Shield share is a kind of layering and a quality of reuse, of repurposing paintings or parts of other works that either failed or didn't feel permanent to me. And that sort of impermanence is a kind of metaphor for this talk of loss and regeneration. Prism dust is made of many parts of paintings from the past few years, including a cutting from the purple section of Shield. So in some ways, the two works share a kind of DNA. Even in stretching a form, I'm interested in these moments when a work breaks frame, as in the top left corner of Prism Dust, or the raggedy edges that you don't see at the moment, that we don't typically associate with stretched canvas. Texturally, you'll notice it's quite soft, almost fuzzy, as it's pastel and oil pastel layered on top of acrylic. I've made drawings throughout the course of the pandemic, and when I returned to painting, my drawing materials followed me. And again here, I was thinking about how I can make these colors that seemingly don't belong together feel like they belong together, how I can make them fit, how I can make a painting that feels like I'm distilling something while also acknowledging that it's temporary. And I feel that pastel is ripe for that metaphor. I could just as well blow this piece away. The title comes from a poem I wrote following a conversation with a friend who's an archaeological botanist. She'd spent the day transferring human remains from bankers' boxes to proper storage. She isn't someone who identifies as spiritual, but she described the weight of this act of watching the light cut through the dust. And so I called it Prism Dust. I think it's a way of reflecting on a time of collective loss and grief, which is always present, but perhaps more visible now. And the sense that what we lose becomes something else. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Olivia.
I do want to read a few comments. We have some nice thoughts in here. Eileen Hoffman says, I love how the work is grounded in this deep connection to the past and yet contemporary. I love the sensitivity to materials and the attention to detail and time. Fran Beeler, a board member for the ATOA, says, I am intrigued and fascinated by your group. What ties you together is a history both real and invented. And this seems like a perfect reflection of the world we live in, interwoven of experiences and stories. Nicely said, Fran. I do want to remind everybody, this is ATOA, Artist Talk on Art. We're a 501c3. All our talks are free. If you'd like to contribute, you can see the various ways you can, including a one-click PayPal that's on our website. So thanks so much, artists. Has been, and I'm sure it'll continue to be a fascinating presentation.
Well, as we said, Jeff is not here, is here with his art. And I don't know, Greg, if you want to say a few things. If not, we'll show.
Certainly. Yes, I will attempt to do some justice to our colleague and friend, Jeff Benjamin. So just by way of introduction, Jeff is a artist, writer, archaeologist, and radio personality as well. Jeff his field is industrial archaeology. So he's very much invested in the industrial past in the US, and he has for some time been excavating a mining town that is in the Hudson Valley near Kingston and Rosendale. And it is a location that once had a train stop. It's called Whiteport, and it no longer exists. It's been, it has been reclaimed by nature pretty much. But this is the kind of thing that he would, that he would excavate and, document the archaeological record. So this first piece is very interesting because it is a very good example of the interdisciplinary approach to things that we're rather obsessed with. So for Jeff, one of the subfields of archaeology that he is very invested in is archaeoacoustics. And I'll read to you the Wikipedia entry for this. It's a subfield of archaeology and acoustics, which studies the relationship between people and sound throughout history. So what Jeff has done with this piece, it is titled Unalogisun. And it's a project it was a museum project that also had a book that was produced in conjunction with it. And basically what Jeff has done is he has taken very ancient root words from various cultures all over the world, and he has aligned them in such a way that you can turn these wheels to form new words. The reason that he did this is because he explained this to me, and it was rather eye-opening, or ear-opening, I should say, is that a lot of the sound that we hear that exists for us is not described in our language. We have no words for it. A lot of the things that a lot of the ways in which we describe sound is onomatopoeic. For example, like tick, tock, or we have some other very basic ways of describing it, but we really don't have ways of describing more complex sounds. So, for example, if you wanted to describe the sound of water dripping on a stone, you could come up with a word by turning these wheels and aligning certain root words to form a very beautiful, poetic, almost song-like word. So I hope that I did justice to that, but that is the basic concept behind Unalogisun, which is the word. I believe it has to do with a world healing idea. Okay, next, Binford Boyle. This is a really cool piece. What Jeff did is he took a very well-known archaeological textbook by famous British, I think he's a British archaeologist, Lewis Binford. And this is something that all students have to read. And he boiled the book. So he literally he took a literal approach to boiling down knowledge into what apparently he explained to me there in that particular print, that particular edition of the book, there's a lot of kaolin in the pulp of the pages. So what you're seeing there pooled at the bottom of these jars is apparently a kind of kaolin or clay, and the rest is just water. And what we have here is this kind of, a distillation of archaeological knowledge. And it's a playful piece, but also it has some very deep and troubling, I would say, connotations. Okay, next. This is an installation that Jeff put together for our most recent show. And these are drawings of ordinary objects that Jeff has found during his travels or excavations. They are a record of random things that he's found, but also they are a personal archaeology, because these are objects that have somehow resonated with him on a poetic level, and he's very lovingly drawn each one and given them a kind of presence that transcends the way that you might encounter these things, like a flip-flop or just a leaf that's blowing along the street. But he's elevated these things into poetic objects.
Well,
and then
this, I think, yes.
I was just going to say, yeah, this is just, we've sort of covered this, but this is just another, example of how Jeff envisions his archaeological practice in segueing into artistic practice as well. So this is just, an image from our last show, and this was the Longue Durée archaeological dig at Holland Tunnel, Newburgh, New York. And just the idea of the performative aspect of archaeology. And one of the things that Jeff taught me, which I found very interesting, is he said that, it's not always what you find that's that important, but it's the context, the earth, like how to read the land and the context of where you dig and how the earth changes at each level. So each level, like every 10 centimeters or so, you'll document how the earth has changed, gone from rich soil to clay or to a rocky substrate and this sort of thing.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, Kyle, we can go with you and just talk about your work. If you want to talk specifically, or I'll show all the works, and I don't know how you want to do it, Kyle.
Thank you, Elisa. I just want to say it's nice to share this space with everybody. Thanks to the ATOA for hosting this event. As I've been saying, I'm currently at a residency at a craft school down in Tennessee right now. So it's nice to see all my collective friends' faces again. I think always a good place to start with my work. It's pretty centric to wood as a material. Along my studies and process with this, I've found that wood is often referred to as prima materia, which is like the first material. So I think it's also another quote that's really good from Neil Gaiman from American Gods is that humans have always had a God-shaped hole in their heart, and trees were the first to fill it. So there's a lot of importance and spirituality for me connected to trees, and just how the branches of a tree sort of can symbolize and resemble many different things in nature and even in ourselves, like the veins under our skin or the patterns of rivers. So I actually had a show, or maybe I should say too, where I'm from. So I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and then I went to school in for my undergraduate in Cincinnati. And then from there, I kind of just took a risk and moved. I had taken a trip to Beacon, New York before, mid-Hudson Valley. And, I just kind of took a risk and moved up there to make things work. And I remember the first time I met Greg, it was 4 a.m. and I was at my favorite grave digging site. And I was going to go over there and knock this guy out with a shovel who had been treading on my territory. And I said, man, that's one excellent shovel there. Maybe I should talk to this guy. But I actually, the first place I met Greg was at an event that Olivia was hosting. So it was kind of just like all this gravity sort of brought us together. And of course, introduced to Elisa after that. And there's just been kind of this soul connection between us and our work, and definitely the interest of kind of like moving both directions at the same time, past and future has kind of connected us. Elisa, could we go back to the last image real quick? So this piece was influenced, I had a solo show at the residency where I'm at now, which is called Aramont School of Art and Craft. But I was going on hikes here, and that's where a lot of my sort of inspiration and influence comes, and it's just kind of submerging myself in nature, and going out on these hikes with friends who are local here, found that there was a lot of these sort of trees, just like husks of where trees used to be, because there was this giant forest fire that decimated the entire town down here in 2016. And these things are still standing, just like huge monuments of the forest of the past. So I was as soon as I got back, like I think I made this piece in like a couple weeks and put it in our show at the up in Unison. So this was kind of my interpretation of some of these husks of trees. I was attracted to it because a lot of my work, and you can move on to the next one if you want, Elisa. A lot of my work is kind of it's interested in things as vessels or hollow places. Even the skin of all these pieces, the negative space is as important as the actual material that is there.
Kyle, do you remember the size of this piece? Because it's really big.
I've always wanted to make a life-size horse. So like it's a thing that stands taller than you know? It's a full horse sculpture. So it's just the skin of the piece, and you can kind of see, I was trying to get good photos of it in the studio to where you could see the light passing through. That's just this ghost-like hollow creature.
I want to go to the next one, just for people to see how you manage.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Lisa. So I was kind of talking about the caribou piece earlier from our show at BSB in Trenton, New Jersey. So there's a lot of, I experienced a lot of loss in my life at a specific point when I was making some of this body of work. So that was definitely influencing some of what I was talking about. So I think grief and bereavement are a part of it. And that's kind of like why I delve so hard into trying to figure out and being interested in people who are also interested in nature. And just that's kind of like where these archaic processes came from. Just like our first interests were in nature, and that's how we kind of derive some spirituality from there too. So it was, I really attached myself to kind of the circle of life that happens within the forest, and just the growth and decay of everything's very important to me. So to talk more specifically about the material of the work and everything, I'm taking found and reclaimed wood off the streets or donations as a way to sort of talk about our ever encroaching humankind moving into nature and deforestation specifically. So that kind of connects back to how I'm talking about these hollow spaces, or treating these sculptures that I'm making as vessels. I'm trying to honor the hollow space that we're creating as humans in the world, or trying to raise attention to it. Can we go back to the fishnet piece, Elisa? Yeah, so this is actually one of the most recent pieces I've made, and been trying to introduce color a little bit more into the work. I've definitely been, so I'm at a craft school now, right? So I'm definitely interested more in finding myself gaining a lot of influence from traditional craft methods. And I was kind of, a lot of the work that I make, it feels intuitive, and then I kind of understand it more afterwards. So I was listening to a podcast that was talking about old Nordic mythology, and there's a story about Loki, the god of mischief, who was banished and upset the other gods and built a hut down by a river, and was turning into a fish to evade capture. And he was so paranoid, he was thinking of ways that he could get captured. So he is credited with the invention of fish nets, and they were coming to get him, and he threw the fish net on the fire, and but it didn't burn fast enough. So it was his own invention that kind of did him in, which is kind of, I feel like, very relevant to how we're treating the nature and our environment at the moment. So there's a lot of intent. You can move on to the next one too, Elisa.
Kyle,
yes.
Kyle Babs Rangel says, great work, Kyle. I love the tree husk and your spiritual connection to trees. Yoram Gelman says, the intricacy of yours, Kyle's woodworking, is just fantastic. This lion, the horse in want of a nail, beautiful. I will add, Stephen Talisnik presented for us once, Kyle. We have a YouTube of his talk, as we will of this talk. You'll find his work interesting. He builds it's different than yours, but it has similarities. I think you'll find it interesting.
Stephen Talisk, you said?
Talisnik. I'll put it in the chat. Okay. You're going to want to give
Please
a look.
Do. Yeah, thanks. So I guess to finish up, I'm very interested in connection in my work, and just having like pieces create a whole. And I think that talks about our connection to each other and then the environment too.
Well, I want to say, Kyle, that I'm drawn to your work since the very first moment that I saw the first piece. So I'm really glad that you have these artworks, in this presentation, because it's refreshing. I didn't know this work, this last one, and it's really an amazing piece. So thank you.
It's mutual, baby. I love you, Elisa.
I love you too. So anyway, I don't want to take more. I think that we have a few more minutes. I will come to my work very quick, I hope. So we'll have a few minutes for Greg, and then maybe a couple of questions. I mean, time is flying. So
that's okay. We can go over, not a problem at all.
Well, this is an installation that I had at the Hudson Valley MoCA Museum, and it helped me to understand my art. It was at the museum for 4 or 5 months, and it really helped me to get more into my work, inspired by the Selknam people of Patagonia, indigenous people that suffered genocide and I had my work is inspired by my encounter with them when I traveled to Patagonia. So this installation was big, was deep for me, and it gave me the opportunity to feel that people complete my work by being in this installation. Not only older, younger, any age that encounter this exhibit helped me to understand my work. So in the back, you see the Selknam people and the whole installation. This is a close-up from one area of the museum. And I did a pass with rocks and with materials that come from our Mother Earth. So this is an installation that I had in the last exhibit, and I call them archaeological tablets. And I encountered these tablets on my walk, and I decided that it was just something that I encountered and history was coming to me. So I collect them as they are. I was lucky to find all of these with these shapes, and I paint them with my own iconography and interpretation of the Selknam people, and I created a universal language with symbols and signs. And this is a close-up that belongs to my work. As I said, I collect everything that Mother Nature provides me, from rocks, bones, stones, and everything that I can find. And people, I've been gracious from this last several years to receive donations from everybody. Something that I generated, I don't know how it happened, but people start bringing me all kinds of materials, and I just follow the shapes of nature, and I think that is one of the ways that I honor. All the shapes are fabulous without my intervention, but this is a way that I communicate with every stone, every bone, and I just follow their shapes, and I complete the way that I feel they have to be completed. This is the first time in my life that I do work that is not as intellectual, but is more comes from my heart. I don't think, I just go to the studio and every shape is telling me what I have to do. So I don't know if you have any questions at the end, but I will go directly to, I think that I had a presentation about the Selknam people before, and many of you already listened my explanation, my comments, my relation with them. I have a personal relation. They were based in Patagonia, in Argentina and Chile. So I'm happy to go back now soon, and I will do again more research in anthropological museums in the South, and I will meet with some of the members of the Selknam community. So I'm really lucky that I have this opportunity to bring the past, to talk about them, and how we have to respect all the traditions and everything that the knowledge that they had, and bring it and see how we can make our land and our earth sustainable again. So I'm going to Greg right now.
Thank you, Elisa. Well said. Well, so some introductory remarks about my work. I'm very interested in the intersection of art, archaeology, and anthropology, and especially where the built environment meets nature. Back in 2013, I did an artist's residency in Ireland at the Burren College of Art, which is in the west of Ireland, in the village of Ballybohan. And my studio looked out at a castle and a sort of Zen-like raked courtyard. And I went there with the idea that I would do some research about some local archaeological sites and incorporate that into my work. But once I was there, I was truly galvanized by what I encountered. I was in an area where you couldn't walk 10 feet without tripping over something ancient. And what I walked away with from that residency was a true obsession with Neolithic, Bronze Age, Iron Age sites, and how I could leverage the forms into an abstract language. So fast forward a bunch of years later, and this is a new, the previous painting and the one you see here, Cave Consciousness. These are very recent paintings. It's a new series. And what I am trying to do here is explore an idea of monumentality. I'm very interested in why, as a species, we decided back in the Neolithic, so once we were coming out of the Mesolithic way of living as hunter-gatherers and living in temporary shelters or in caves and, you know, moving around a lot, why, when we entered the Neolithic period where we were, you know, having a lifestyle of sedentism, and we were building villages and making pots and domesticating plants and animals and building these rather elaborate monuments in stone and having to quarry extremely large stones and, you know, assemble them into passage graves and dolmens and stone, you know, rings of stone and this sort of thing. Why was this so important to us? And why do we continue to do so on a much grander scale? The idea of monumentality seems to be so central to who we are as a species. It's certainly right at the foundation of our civic culture. So I pose questions, I don't have any answers, but I like to be able to incorporate these forms and the underlying energy into an abstract language. And again, as I said, where, you know, the built environment meets nature, which is really so key to my experience of these structures out in the fields of Ireland. And of course, later on in Spain as well. Part of the, just some notes on my process. These are acrylic on, oh, can you go back? Sorry. They're just, you know, acrylic on wood panel. They are hard edge abstraction, you know, I'm using tape, creating certain patterns and gestures. I try to, for some time now, I've been trying to reconcile formal hard edge geometric abstraction with elements of a more gestural or organic abstraction. I found that really hard to do without it, you know, just looking like a big mess, a big muddle. I'm feeling very good about this, so, you know, we'll see. The other note too is that you'll see there's some patterns here, and these actually have a very specific genesis. I mentioned before something about entoptic patterns and the lexicon of designs that you find in Neolithic art. So this is something that the archaeologist Davis Lewis Williams has elucidated in a couple of his books on this subject. One is The Mind in the Cave, and the other one is Inside the Neolithic Mind. And I've become very intrigued by this theory that's in the archaeological community about how some of our earliest art is aligned to altered states of consciousness. So I've been trying to, incorporate that idea into this work. Okay, you can go to the next one now. These are earlier works. These are works on paper from a series called Brutalithic Sequence. So it's sort of a playful, the title is just a playful combination of the idea of brutalism, movement in art and architecture called brutalism, with the idea of lithic or Neolithic. And this was a very more of a literal attempt to bridge the past and the present. I took stock photographs of well-known brutalist buildings, and then applied them to a host piece of paper just through acrylic photo transfer. And in the process of that transfer, these relatively recent buildings were rendered ruin-like because of the degradation of the image. And then around them, I drew Neolithic sites that are based on actual Neolithic sites, but they're actually made up. So there's a bit of narrative here where I've taken poetic license and created Neolithic sites that don't exactly exist in the archaeological record, but they are a kind of a poetic idea, especially since I taught myself to draw like an antiquary. So these are very much looped back into 19th century antiquarian illustration. So using this, stippled technique to, have them be reminiscent of that. And then also there's an element of stratigraphic drawing, which is a convention of our archaeological documentation that you'll see around these scatters of stones would actually be, a document that you would find in a data report, for example, of an archaeological site. But then again, these stratigraphic drawings are based on real ones, but they're not exactly anything that exists out there. They are made up. Okay, and this is the last slide. So this is just another view of our last show at Hallentunnel Newburgh. And there you can see, actually, Olivia Baldwin is there looking at one of her paintings, Prism Dust. And just behind her, you see one of my paintings, Form is Memory. And then the two paintings in the foreground are part of this image, this series that I mentioned before. So the one on the left is called Thermal Shock, and the one on the right is Cueva Pintada, which is actually based on a specific archaeological site in the Canary Islands on Gran Canaria, which was a site in the I guess it was around 1000 AD, and the indigenous people of that area, the Guanches, had built an amazing community where there was an area that featured something that we know very little about. Actually, it might have been almost like a temple, perhaps, or a calendar of sorts. And what is remarkable about this place is that there are these cave paintings that look like they were drawn by Joseph Albers. They're totally contemporary and geometric and amazing and trippy, and yet they were done at, around 1000 AD. So I took, some inspiration from that, and including the palette, of the painting. And just another thing I wanted to talk about is the gestures that you'll see in the paintings. I mentioned before that I'm interested in this, having this collision of organic gestures with hard-edged geometric abstractions. So, these paintings often begin with the organic gesture. And that sort of provides the spirit and the impetus to build the painting, to build all of the forms around them. Incidentally, these paintings, I'm not, making any preparatory sketches for these things. I have an idea, and then I just go for it. I just do the painting, and I start taping and making shapes, and it all exists in my mind's eye. And I think that's it.
Oh, well, great. And thank you for for listening. And I don't know if there is any question, but I think that we are on time to maybe, wrap up. I don't know, Barry, you tell me.
First thing, let's give applause for all the artists tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, everyone.
Such a nice job. I sort of let it go. There were a lot of comments. I'm going to read through them relatively quickly. Sandra Indig said, "I love this piece." This is referring to one of your monumental pieces, Greg. "I feel the weight." And she says, "We like to expand, to reach beyond, therefore monumentality." So she's posing an answer to your question. I did recommend, Greg, and maybe everyone, look up Sapiens by Harari. It's a great book, and it goes into the history of man, very large book.
I just finished reading it.
Yes, and I'm very familiar. I'm a fan. I'm very familiar, a fan, and it's really somebody that we have to pay attention. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's
Yoram Gelam asks, "Alyssa, are the paints you use derived from natural pigments?"
My work? No.
Your paints? No.
No, they are regular, but in the 10,000 years that the Selknam people used paintings in their body, actually, because they were nomadic and gatherers, so they only had their body, the tent, the arrows, and a few bags to bring the arrows to the next place. So they use natural elements. Not my work. It's just, I use the materials that we have, available nowadays.
And the Selknam people also had a Blick art store nearby. We all know that in Patagonia. Suprina Trashe asks, "Alyssa, when you create the circles, do you invite the viewers into the interior of them? Those tend to be sacred circles you're not supposed to enter, correct?"
Well, thank you, Suprina, for the question. I had the pleasure to have 2 or 3 visits by kids when I had my first circle, and one of the kids came and asked me permission to get in. The kid was 8 years old, and I said, sure, and he got in, sat silently, and came out and said, "I feel different now." So I guess that they are sacred, but I think that I invite people. The circles are big, people can get in and meditate. And since that kid, I think that everybody is welcome to get into my circles. And also one of the kids came and whispered in my ear and he said, "Elisa, you are very resourceful." 7 years old. So you have the opportunity, as I said, the opportunity that I had in that exhibit that lasted almost 5 months to learn about my work, because the interaction with people is the best thing that you can have when you create art. just to complete your work, because you do it with one sense, one intuition, and people have their own reactions. So thank you for the question, Suprina. And if I have a circle again, you are welcome to sit inside.
I think another lesson there is we have to listen to kids a little bit more. We know they're very insightful, and as well as listen to the kid inside of us. Robin Halpern says, interesting to experience and creatively executed about your work, Elisa. Lawrence Wheatman says, Elisa, your use of the materials is the headline. Robin Halpern again says, thank you all, your work is really impressive. Jenna Lash says, insightful work and presentations with wonderful archaeological context that give even more structure to the art. Babs Reingold says, beautiful installations at the museum, Elisa.
Well, yeah, thank you, Babs. I was very lucky, you know, have the dream to be in that museum. That is a wonderful space, and the respect to work with people that they understand your work and they allow you to create, use the floor, the ceiling, everything that they have. It's really a blessing, and I was blessed to have that opportunity. Thank you. Thank you.
Sabrina Trash says again, so beautiful and magical. She also says, thank you for all your time and energy. And so many very nice comments. Just one more. Nancy Dahl, this was such an excellent presentation. So that's a thank you to all of you. And Kyle, it's been asked that you share your email in the chat.
Just saw that pop up. I'm all over it. Coming
Cool.
at you.
Very good.
May I make a comment?
Of course, anybody's welcome. Go ahead, Babs.
I just want to say, first of all, fantastic presentation, and I feel such a connection with many of you in this group. And because of my work with trees and deforestation and such, I have also a particular connection I feel with Kyle and his work. So I'm going to look him up and see more. But I also, I don't know if Elisa mentioned this to you, Greg, but I did a piece in an installation in 2003 called The Longue Durée at the Savannah College of Art and Design. And it's just so, yours is the first time I've seen that same title and used for an exhibition. So it was just fascinating to me. And Elisa and I had a little exchange about it when I first saw her announcement.
I didn't have the chance to tell him, but you know, quantum physics, we are all connected and the energy goes from one place to another. So we are not isolated. We are, all humanity is connected, the same that we are connected with nature and everything that is alive. So that's why, you know, I think that the quantum physics created that bridge between your installation and the idea that Greg had to put this name. So I trust that, you know, it's wild, but it happens all the time. I think that we are really all connected and we all complete each other. That's the way that I feel. Among all the artists, we are telling a story that together we are telling a human story. Different aspects, different sides, different moments, and we are all telling one story that is the human story. That's what I believe.
I'd like to see photos of that installation.
I'll connect with you and send you a link to them. I'll send you some images. Yeah, it's a piece that, well, anyway, I don't want to get into it now, but I will do that. Okay.
Before we close the chat, Barry, I would like to say that we all have websites, like all of you. We are on Instagram. You can, you know, we didn't talk about our careers, our resume, biography. We didn't want to take the time. We wanted to really share who we are as artists and who we are as a group. And it's a wonderful blessing, again, to be together and share. This group has a lot of content, a lot of human content, and we are blessed to be together. So if you want to see more of your work, our work and who we are, what is our trajectory, we all have websites and Instagram or Facebook, whatever is easy, or you can, even if you have more questions, you can talk to us individually. And thank you again, Barry and ATOA.
You're welcome. I'm going to just make one or two comments, and then I'm going to hand it over to Lois and then Sandra, who have the last two talks of the year. I often think art is a language, and as artists, we try and forge a new language. And that was obvious when you looked at your work. You're at the same time pulling from the past, but there's definitely a lot of you in the language that you're putting together, and it's very contemporary. And I think whenever you see a work, it's great to do an impressionist piece, it's great to do a cubist piece, but let's face it, that was done. There's something about creating a new language, not just that it expresses us now in contemporary, but I think we look as artists to forge our own new languages. I do appreciate the very personal explanations. A lot of times when we talk about art, artists share something that's very deep and very personal. And we had that tonight, not to call you out, but Kyle, it was very touching when you shared those thoughts. And I think we're at our best when we share those personal things. It's somewhat cathartic, and it sort of maybe releases the hold they have on us. And at the same time, the sharing, the community element does come into play, where we sort of experience it as a group and we all grow through it together. Greg, you made mention of altered states and early art. It's obviously true in tribal art or in art with shamans, but I want you to know there is a trend in contemporary art and also in Silicon Valley, where they're microdosing. There's a contemporary trend of artists that are doing minor or major hallucinogens. I don't want to call out Good Naked Gallery, but we showed them, and I once was at one of their Zooms, and I asked the question, were you guys hallucinating when you made this art? And they were. And that was artists, again, they're trying to reach inside, very deeply inside, as you are, Greg, when you sort of went to those prehistoric forms. And sometimes, it's hard to get past yourself, and we need a help. That's why a lot of people drink. They need to relax and dance and meet someone. Well, sometimes artists do take hallucinogens to get to a deeper self, not to avoid or evade the self, but to touch something even more real. Because as you say, Elisa, quantum mechanics is quite fuzzy and hairy, but it's obviously what's going on. We are connected. We don't see it. We see outline and body on the inside. I've got news for you all. That's not the way reality is. That's just the way this monkey looks at it. And we do have the opportunity to look at it a lot deeper. Again, I want to thank you all, but I want to move to Lois. Lois, give us a short summary of the talk you have coming up, and then we'll go to Sandra. And again, it's every Monday, ATOA, new and interesting format coming in 2022. It'll be slightly different. I won't be moderating, and it will, you'll see as it comes. Be on the lookout for a new Zoom link and also a new time starting in January at 7 p.m. So Lois, I'm going to ask you to unmute and tell us about cosmology and cocktails.
The way you put that together. Well, thank you, everyone. It was wonderful. So it didn't get past me that the December 20th is right the day before the solstice, the winter solstice. So I really felt I wanted to get to the cosmos and experience the air and fire of the elements, because I'm basically in the water and the earth elements. So I asked a few friends, artist friends, to talk about their artistic journeys, and they are expert at cosmos, the subject of the cosmos. And the 6 artists that will be in this talk, and they'll talk 10 minutes about their work, are Daria Dorosh, Karen Fitzgerald, Kristen Reed, Andra Samuelson, Sandra Taggart, and Tamara Wyndham. And it's just fabulous what they're going to put together. And talking about the cosmos and cosmology. The cosmos is the order of the world in Greek, and logia is discourse. And the cosmology talks about so many disciplines together, just as the antiquarian view is to combine an interdisciplinary study of the world, the ancient world, and today. So we also are going to talk about lots of disciplines. And to celebrate the cosmos, we're going to have a party atmosphere if you'd like to make some toasts with cocktails. So I studied this a little bit, and I found there are a lot of cocktails that have cosmology in their spirit, like the Cosmopolitan. There are drinks called Stardust, the Cosmonaut, the Aviator, and I sent Barry the links for this. So it could be fun if you bring your drink, or you could go non-alcoholic. There is a Milky Way cocktail, a deep space cocktail, the Outer Limits, and there's a whole site for a space-themed party. So I hope that we're going to have fun on December 20th, and it should be enlightening and fun, kind of like a space bacchanal, I suppose. So please join us and spread the word.
Very nice. I just want to point out Lois is a liquor wholesaler, but it did not influence her recommending that we go get drunk for the talk.
Well, cocktails can be creative, let's put it that way.
Sandra, I'm going to unmute you. Sandra has an interesting talk coming. That'll be on the 20th. Just a brief explanation, or as long as you like, Sandra. We'll get her to unmute. Let's see. Sandra, we can't hear you. Just unmute. Let's see. It will be a silent talk. It'll pay homage to the early silent films. Well, maybe we'll hold off, Sandra. I'm having a problem getting you to unmute.
Oh, I did it.
Good.
It's because I'm using my iPad that I don't know how to use. But I'm learning slowly. I'm sorry about the time because I usually have a class then, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, I just want to say that I cross-pollinate my practices as an artist and psychoanalyst. And to paraphrase the quote which inspired the theme of this talk that we'll be giving on shadows and reflections, I'm paraphrasing now. I see through a glass darkly, but soon I will see the light. And then I wonder what the world would be like without shadows of every gradation, especially liminal light, the time of altered states of consciousness. There will basically be four of us speaking, and my topic is creating meaning, bringing to consciousness memories and dreams. Dr. Ina Rosensvit will talk on the brain as a creativity machine, the brain, the mind, and the visual and emotional perception. Toby Kahn, who's internationally known, shadows and reflections, art and healing. And Ari Slama, who is French, exploring our collective memory through the signified and signifier, the symbolism of colors and shapes. And each person will talk for about 20 minutes and show their images. It should be an interesting talk. These are really top people, or I wouldn't have asked them. And I think it fits, you know, the general theme of our sessions. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
I think two exciting talks coming. I think Lois, you're following up with the cosmological, sort of interesting coming after this talk from this organization. And of course, Sandra, sounds like light material for us all.
Sorry. No, it won't be difficult, I assure you. Ina will make it very clear.
You will. I do want to say, I think I noticed that JB Studios, is that Jeff Benjamin that came in at the end? No. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Again, thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Community was mentioned. We certainly come together, a lot of new faces, and we are, as much as we look separate, we are connected. And the more we meet other people on these formats, the more human we are. Thank you, Alyssa, for organizing this. Barbara, for what you did last week. What a great meeting. Audrey, for bringing cereal for all of us. Thank you. Enjoy, everybody.
Thank
What a
you.
nice night.
Have a nice
Looking
week.
forward, looking forward.
Bye,
to your
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good
Great
night.
Bye.
presentation,
Thanks,
guys.
Wonderful.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank
nice.
you. Wonderful, wonderful.
Mhm.